All right, everybody, we are back in the shop again. I know it's been kind of a few videos where we've been in the shop, but we do have some events coming up. And today actually starts FL2K at Gainesville Raceway, not 15 miles from the track. Actually, it's only about 15 minutes from the track, even shorter on mileage wise. But Drew and I were already committed to run the Trans Am race, or at least to crew for Lee at the Trans Am race this weekend with the Viper. So, like any race car, it needed some work before we took it up to Virginia this weekend for the Trans Am race. Not a lot, but things do quickly snowball out of control sometimes with race cars. And we decided to make some changes to make the car better, to try and address some problems that the car was having, hopefully provide us with a little bit more longevity in some areas. So get into that in just a second and show you guys what all I'm talking about. Here we go. So the biggest thing that we are addressing on this thing, which turned into moving a few other things and changing everything all around in the back of the car, we needed to add a cooler for the transmission. Well, the car did not have a pump for the transmission. The transmission doesn't have a pump to pump its own fluid because it's a TR6060 manual transmission. There are some of those that are available with a cooler set up on them, but Lee has 4 transmissions for the car, and none of them are set up with the cooler provisions. So we had to add our own, which the red car already has that. Morning. Morning. So the red car already has that, but this car only had a diff cooler, and it was actually mounted up here in front of the diff, and then it pumped backwards to a cooler back behind the diff, so it was kind of all just a mess down under there. So basically what we did is, you know, transmission is here, so we made this pump the transmission pump. It's going to pump back to a cooler and then pump back up to the transmission, so it kind of makes a loop now better than, you know, diff to to the pump, back to the cooler, back to the diff. So that's going to be simplified. And then the diff pump is now going to mount back here on the back frame rail, so it'll just go from the diff to the pump, over to the cooler, back to the diff. So simplifying both of those systems, but you can kind of see the whole back of the car's off. Well, we needed to have some more room back here for the coolers, and the battery box was mounted back here. And the battery box was really not in a great location, weight-wise, for how the car needs to weigh on the track. So battery box was really heavy, mounted there right off the end of the frame rail. So we cut that out, got rid of all that, and moved the battery way up here. See if we can see it. Is the light working? Yeah, so it's tucked way up there into the front. Real small Braille battery that we run in this car. And then the electrical cutoff solenoid right beside it. So not only did we get rid of the battery weight at the back of the car, we were also able to eliminate probably 5 pounds of cable that ran from the back of the car, you know, back here, all the way up to the engine. This thing was kind of slow to crank anyways, and I kind of think it was because the battery cable had been replaced and it was kind of small. So now that it's a lot shorter, hopefully the thing cranks a little faster. I mean, it always cranked, but sometimes it kind of made you think that it might not crank because it was real slow to crank. But we're getting that all taken care of. Car's fresh off a wind at Watkins Glen in the rain, so it was pretty dusty, dirty, messy underneath it. So we got all that taken care of first thing. And because of the rain race, the brakes are still in pretty good shape. They don't see the abuse that they see during, you know, dry race, because you're not going as fast. Can't stop as fast on a wet racetrack. So brakes are good for VIR. We've got, you know, the extra brakes prepped for the weekend, because pretty much the car will use up a set of front rotors about every weekend, uses a set of pads per weekend, and you know, normally the rear pads last at least about 2 to 3 races, and then the front pads, they're not completely gone, but when it comes to racing, you know, a 100-lap race, you don't want the pads to be completely shot at the end of the race. So you put a fresh set on for qualifying, and then in qualifying they kind of get bedded in, and usually by lap 3, that's your killer lap anyway. The tires are up to temp. Send it on lap 3 and 4 if you didn't get a good lap in on lap 3, and then you're done with all of that. So the brakes are all ready to go for the race, and you've got as much pad as you could possibly have for the race itself. Now there are some different calipers and rotors that we're going to be putting on this car, and they are set up with like a, you know, a thicker like endurance style race pad, and we'll get more races actually out of a set of pads. But we haven't put those on yet because there's some engineering that I have to do with a different caliper bracket, and I have to machine a different hat for to connect the rotor ring to the actual hat. Just some different things we've got to take care of. But the coolers, like you saw a second ago, both coolers are going to mount to this plate, and then my job for this morning is going to be to build the ducting that's going to seal off here, and we're going to use some thin metal and like tack weld it together, and basically the pump will bolt in. You see this bracket here actually, or not really a bracket, but I guess the front of the air duct, actually cut that out on the arc droid. Worked out really nice, folded the edges in, and the way we're going to have it set up is this will be permanently attached to the base, and then there's going to be just a little tiny gap between here that we'll either seal off with some rubber or maybe some tape and get a really good seal, and it's going to draw air through this, and it'll basically dump out the vents that are in the back of the bumper, which are over there on the ground. So, time for me to get to work. So this is what I mentioned earlier about the plate with the ducts. So the idea was that we make this permanent, because I've done or worked on some other cars where like this wasn't as easy to work on, and like this stuff like had metal that wrapped around it with flanges that bolted on, and we're trying to keep it simple. So what we're going to do is use just a little bit of sealing tape on there, whether that's some AC sealing tape, because that peels off really easy like the metal tape. But the idea was, if we have a cooler fail, we can just run a blade in and slice it, unbolt one cooler, put the other cooler in, and with a fan it'll just be take 2 bolts out, bolts in, bolts out. The plate bolts in to the car, or at least it will when we're done with it. We're going to have a mounting stud there, the mounting stud there that bolts up to the trunk underneath. You can see Drew is pulling the diff out because we decided, based on the weather conditions this weekend, the car's going to be fast. So we need to go from a 345 gear down to a 333 gear to try and avoid a shift into 5th gear on the fast straightaways at VIR. So the air's going to be really good up there this weekend, and that's something that we've got to factor in. Like, you got to factor in the weather.
You're going to be making all the horse torques.
All the horsey torques. And this is a fairly stock engine. Actually, I believe the engine is completely stock.
Yeah, and it's a Gen 3 motor at that, which is not even as good.
It's a Gen 3?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's got headers, the exhaust, some kind of little bit aftermarket exhaust, and then a Mopar programmer. So I guess you're going back in, eh? You already got the diff swap? Nice.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Now hopefully the trans is good. We think we might have a transmission that might have a little bit of a catchy third. So we'll have to figure that out, but we do have another spare because Lee's wife brought one up yesterday. You want to swap the transmission later today?
No, I want this one
Hey,
to work perfect.
is it better here than at the track?
Oh, so much easier here. Not even funny how easy.
Because
it
you
is
got to
here.
swap one in New York.
Yeah, in the rain.
In the rain.
On jack stands, like, yeah.
Yeah.
That was not fun.
Sometimes working at the racetrack is tough. But some weekends go perfect at the track.
Just like this weekend will.
Just like this weekend's gonna.
Yes, it's gonna be
Yeah.
great.
All right, well, time to jump in. Get this last little bit wrapped up. We do still have to check the alignment and scaling. Only made a small camber change for for VIR versus Watkins Glen. Small change, so the alignment, like it was just on one side of the car. So corner balance, which will take me probably 30 minutes to an hour since everything's fairly similar. Check the alignment, mount this. You can see we've got all the wires hanging down that we still have to wrap up. So, but all the electrical in the car is done, right?
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. So we're gonna get to work. Go for a test drive here in a little bit. Get this thing on the road and in the box. And then we're driving to Virginia today. And missing FL2K right in our backyard.
It's a little ridiculous. The one time they bring it to Gainesville,
I know.
10 minutes from the house.
10 minutes from the house.
It's ridiculous.
So I went out last night just
did go out there?
to say hey to the boys.
Uh-huh.
And they ended up needing, well, Pete was helping with Mullet, work on some of the traction control stuff. So I got him a data log to have a really good data log to base traction control stuff off of. Left my computer there.
Nice.
So had to go run back out last night, and I found out it's only like, well, let's just say I made really good time last night in the middle of the night. And my truck, it's got a speed limiter on it, and it kind of sucks. So anyways, allegedly, yeah. So we're getting to work. Keep you guys in the loop, and we will be filming some at VIR this weekend. I still think it's my favorite road racetrack. Like there's a section, it's just great. But I'll tell you more about that when we're at the racetrack. time lapse, you saw me put all that together, which there's my tape I'm gonna use to seal up the edges there. Got the Deutsch connectors wired on. That will eventually connect to these wires here. Ended up having to flip this bracket around because it isn't quite square to the chassis bolts, or the holes where that's at. Got the first hose made, did that. That plugged in. We'll probably end up doing an 8L clamp or something, or it may just zip tie to the hose once it comes back. The way I'm trying to set it up is the diff lines are all going to end up on this side. Drew's working on a bracket right now to mount the pump right here on a bracket that we can remove so that we can still change the diff. And then, so all the diff cooler stuff will be over here. That'll be this, you know, this cooler and fan that's on this side, and then the trans cooler and fan will be on the driver's side. So, getting there. It's already the afternoon. We gotta get on the road because we still have 9 hours to drive to Virginia. Yeah, and I gotta go for a test drive and make sure the trans works and bleed the brakes, line, corner balance.
Don't start saying that.
The oil's changed. The cool shirt's mounted. So yeah, we're checking things off the list, and we will get to the track sometime today, hopefully. Maybe not. Probably not.
Why do you say that?
Probably not.
Stop saying that.
Shush. I'm an optimist sometimes.
Yeah, but when you say it, that's when bad things happen.
All right, back to work. Well, as these things sometimes do, we had some issues. It just happens. And sometimes when you're making new stuff, it doesn't fit with other things. And in our case, my ductwork that I had made kind of interfered with the rear diffuser. Not really the rear diffuser itself, but the nut certs that were in the rear diffuser and the rear bumper that bolt everything together. So we had to do some working around that, as well as, you know, go through all the alignment, scaling, and things quickly snowballed until it's dark outside. So, you know, that's just how this stuff goes. So Drew ran home to grab his stuff. My stuff's already in my truck. We're gonna see how far we can drive tonight. Maybe switch off driving, take a nap drive, take a nap drive, take a nap drive, etc., etc. Because we got 9 hours to go to get to Virginia. So, anyways, that's gonna wrap it up for this video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching and subscribing and following along and commenting and sharing and all that great stuff that you guys are doing. Next video, this bad hot rod on the racetrack in Virginia. See you then.